Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Runger, president of Seattle Rotary. Welcome to our Wednesday Rotary meeting. I am looking forward to hearing from our guest speaker today, Marilyn Strickland. She is Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce president and CEO. She has a year under her belt, so it'll be interesting to hear what she's learned about our city and what's ahead. Past President Bill Center for our inspiration, and Bill, so good to see you again.
Thanks, President Cindy. It's great to see all of you. I had a new knee installed 5 weeks ago, and I get another one next Monday. So I'll probably see you again mid-April. I have missed you. Seattle Chamber CEO Marilyn Strickland, today's featured speaker, is a champion of diversity and inclusion. Marilyn, that should not be a hard sell to this audience. Coming of age amidst the civil rights struggle, women's lib, and affirmative action, I came to regard diversity as a fundamental moral imperative. It was just the right thing to do. I'm proud of the tremendous progress we made in that arena during my years in the Navy. But not till I started teaching at the University of Washington did I really grasp the true value and importance of diversity. I taught leadership to a highly diverse group of international students. Near the beginning of each year, I could always count on several of those students to ask, why are we studying leadership? What we really need to study is management. They weren't convinced you could actually learn leadership in the classroom or that it was all that important in the first place. And I'd set about explaining the difference between leadership and management and why both were important. Eventually, I happened upon this brilliant quote by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. I'd ask, which part of that is leadership? Which part is management? Which will produce the better ship? With the management only giving orders approach, the best ship you can hope for is one you can envision and successfully communicate to the workers. Igniting and empowering the vision and imagination of the workforce will yield a vastly superior ship, one beyond the bounds of your own imagination. In the course of those discussions, I came to recognize that the more diverse the workforce, the better the likely result. Addressing the complex challenges of our rapidly changing world requires all the brainpower and imagination we can muster. We need problem solvers who see those challenges and potential solutions from every conceivable vantage point. We need people with diverse experience, diverse education, diverse cultural and social backgrounds, and different ways of conceptualizing solutions. Teach them to yearn for a better future. Empower them to put their ideas on the table. Then be open to the possibility that someone else may actually have a better idea about what needs to be done and how to do it. Allow me to conclude with a short prayer of thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord, for this food and this fellowship. And thank you especially that everyone is not just like me. Amen.
Now for our main program. We will have past President Nancy Osborne introduce our main program. But before I turn it over to Nancy, let me say a few things about past President Nancy. So in addition to her taking leadership positions on local and also international organizations like founding international chair of the Rotarian Malaria Partners, and also, thank you, board chair of Bloodworks. Did you know that Nancy helps manage a flock of 60 feral sheep? Okay, yeah, 60 feral sheep on Decatur Island where lots of baby sheep are born. Also, she holds the record for the longest running billboard, you can see this right here, at SeaTac. And it says, Nancy, business consultant, fights malaria, Rotarian, why not you too? And I don't know about you, have you guys seen this at SeaTac? Yeah, we've all seen that. And I just love, coming or going from Seattle and just seeing, that tie, your face, and also the connection to Rotary. So anyway, come on up, Nancy.
Thank you, Cindy. I've had a lot of really funny stories about the billboard, so catch me later. Some of them are. Marilyn Strickland has taken the reins as CEO of the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce at a time when the owners of many Seattle businesses feel embattled and even more regulations and calls for new taxes. The former mayor of Tacoma says that she wants to show business has a role to play in improving the community beyond serving as the city's ATM. Born in Korea, where her father was stationed in the military, Marilyn returned to Tacoma as a baby. As a teen, she began her professional career at Burger King in Tacoma, wearing an orange, brown, and yellow polyester uniform. But after receiving a BA from the University of Washington and an MBA from the Clark Atlanta University, Marilyn joined Starbucks, where the dress code was far more relaxed. At Starbucks, she worked in the mail order catalog and online business division before working for an advertising agency where she launched the Tacoma's first public broadband system. Marilyn entered politics after being recruited by Tacoma's former mayor, Brian Ebersol, and was encouraged by her mother, who said, quote, "If you just sit on the sidelines, you're not fulfilling your duty." Serving as the mayor of Tacoma from 2010 to 2017, she forged new ground on transportation, education, international investment, and economic development. Marilyn, now CEO and president of the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce, a 136-year-old business organization representing 2,400 companies. Please welcome Marilyn Strickland to our podium so she can share her plans for the Chamber as the regional convener to address major issues facing our community.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. And I just want to compliment Cindy, President Cindy, who I met when I first took this job. She is a dynamic leader, and I'm very pleased to be here. I would also like to take this moment to thank our servers today who are serving us lunch and taking away our plates. So let's thank them. I don't know how this, hold on. All right. So as mentioned earlier, the Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce is a business advocacy organization. And as I said at our annual meeting in September, we should never apologize for that. It's okay to say that you support businesses. It's okay to say that you support an economy where people have jobs that pay well and have benefits and retirements. There's nothing wrong with that. And I say that because watching from kind of afar in Tacoma, and even when I first took this job, it kind of felt as though we as an organization were a little sheepish about owning who we are, being proud of who we are, and unapologetically advocating for businesses and employers. The Seattle Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce has 2,400 members who employ over 700,000 people in this region. And our vision as a chamber is to have an economically vibrant and globally competitive region where businesses of all sizes flourish and prosperity is shared. And the last part that I just mentioned about the shared prosperity is incredibly important. As we look around and read all these reports about Seattle being the most educated city and companies expanding and growing, we have to be aware of the fact that that prosperity is not shared by all. And That's what I really talk about when I talk about an inclusive economy. We also have to understand that as employers, we do have a role to play. When I look at some of our largest employers and I think about equity, diversity, and inclusion, I ask myself, do our boards and leadership reflect the community we serve? When we look at diverse workforces, the people who are diverse should not only be in the lowest wage jobs in an organization. So as leaders of companies and organizations, I ask us, with Cindy's theme of impact and action, to recruit diverse candidates, to identify talent and help them on a path of leadership and wage and promotion. And do it through the lens of equity. And if you can, give someone a second chance who maybe made a mistake a few years ago, who needs to get back into the workforce. When you have power, you can make the rules. So as responsible people who care about this community and are pro-business, having a diverse and inclusive workforce is actually good business, as mentioned earlier. So as we look at our day-to-day, one of the questions that we often ask ourselves is, how exactly do we expand economic opportunity? Now, I just gave you one example of how that can be done, but I want to go back to being mayor of Tacoma just for a minute, because I was mayor for 8 years and it was a big part of my life. Now, when I think about the progress that we made when I was mayor, I look at a few areas. I look at education. It was incredibly important for us as a city at the time to really tackle the progress of our public education system in Tacoma. When I took office in 2010, USA Today newspaper dubbed Tacoma as a dropout factory with a high school graduation rate of 55%. By the time I left office, the graduation rate was 87%. And that did not happen because I single-handedly got mad about it and said, do something. It happened because the school district partnered with the business community, with philanthropy, with housing, and we all said to ourselves, we all have a role to play when it comes to improving educational outcomes for kids in our public school system. That could have been in the form of providing a summer job for someone, for tutoring, for looking at housing, for understanding that before a child shows up for school, he or she has many problems that come into the classroom, and what were we doing as a community? That's how you work together. That's how you collaborate. The other thing I'm most proud of is global engagement. And I say that in the context of the reputation that Tacoma had, and to a lot of people up here still has. Granted that the curb appeal on I-5 doesn't exactly scream global sophisticated city. But understanding that we were able to get international investors to see the beauty in Tacoma, that would prompt local investment. So we had investment coming from China and Vietnam, and we also hosted President Xi Jinping when he was here on his way to see President Obama, which is a really big deal. Transportation, things we talk about still today. Tacoma had not passed by voters a transportation measure to fix our streets since I was in first grade. So we put a measure on the ballot. It failed the first time because the Tacoma Chamber came out and opposed it. After that, I sat down with them and said, okay, I need you to help me pass this. We worked together and it passed. So for the first time in 40 years, Tacoma voters said yes to a transportation measure. And I say that because those three areas that I served in as mayor, economic development, global engagement, transportation, education, have really informed my ability to do the work that I do today at the Chamber. Now, we're a business organization, no doubt, but we are involved in so many other issues: transportation, housing, education, and those things all have a huge impact on the ability for a business community to be successful. So the Chamber is 136 years old. I call it the oldest startup in Seattle. And I say that because we're a small, agile organization, about 40 employees who support all these folks who do good things. And when we think about what's important to our members, they want a network, they want support for what they're doing, and they want access to things that they may not be able to have. We have a business health trust at the Chamber that provides health care insurance for small businesses who can't afford it. That's a really big benefit for businesses. Some of the other things we do that are really cool as well is that we do an international leadership mission every year. So the slide you see up here shows us in Asia, and the one in the middle was last year's event in Singapore, and that was actually at the ambassador's residence, where we took a cohort of leaders from this region and we study what happens around the world in regions that do well and bring those lessons home. And then this year, we're actually going to head to Charleston, South Carolina. And these are photos of some of our other regional leadership missions that we did domestically as well. The point here is that the Seattle Metro Chamber is a regional leadership organization. And we take that very seriously, even though our name says Seattle. From Snohomish County to Pierce County to King County, we want to do what we can to make sure that the businesses can thrive, that we have transportation systems that work, we have housing that people can afford, especially middle-income folks, and doing what we can to make sure that we are training the educated workforce. Now, 40 people at 1301 Fifth Avenue do not accomplish all those things, but we know we have influence. We know we have a voice, and we know that we can help move public policy forward. Every year, we do an annual meeting at the end of September. We host about 1,000 people right here in this building. And last year, we hosted Francois Loco-Denou, who is the president and CEO of F5 Networks. And as the CEO of a tech company, he acknowledged that all businesses have a role to play when it comes to improving the community. The second photo you see is our regional leadership conference, where every year we bring together 300 business and civic leaders to problem solve and find solutions to our most pressing issues. I'm going to get this clicker right, I swear. All right, so the photo you see on the left there is a photo from Restaurant After Hours, which is actually happening tonight at the Seattle Aquarium, where 700 of our closest friends will get together and sample food and drink from 24 restaurants, breweries, and distilleries, many of whom are chamber members. We also do a Women in Leadership initiative, which recognizes women who are advancing gender equity in the workplace. Elevate Northwest, our small business symposium, which really helps small businesses get access to resources and learning the ins and outs of what it takes to run a business. And I tell folks that for a lot of small businesses, they have really great ideas, but running a business is not the same as knowing how to do hair or being a great cook. So how do we help them take their passion, take their gift, and turn it into viable businesses? And then finally, the last photo is our public officials reception at the convention center. Can't say a lot of Seattle public officials showed up last year at the event, but it was very, very successful, and a lot of people were there, and we did a really, really good job. So this is a sample of some of our members, and you see that there are companies from all industries representing a lot of different sectors, but it gives you an idea of the breadth and the depth of who we are and who we represent. And I think it's important, too, for us to really think about assumptions that people make sometimes. When I took the job at the Chamber of Commerce, there were people who said to me, knowing me as mayor, was like, Chamber of Commerce, that just really doesn't seem like you, Marilyn. And as I think about what was possible with this organization in this market, I told folks that all the things that are important to me, like economic development, economic inclusion, and lifting people up, are tied to jobs that pay well. If I am able to advocate for businesses, they can hire more people, and they can lift more people up. So that was really why I took this job. And the other thing that's important too, and I said this in my interview with Seattle Business Magazine, is that it doesn't feel like elected leadership in Seattle likes business. That's not breaking news, I know. And I say that because we have to change the narrative. When a lot of people think of business, they think of a handful of large global companies that take the headlines, and they don't look deeper into the fact that these are companies doing good work in the community, and there are a lot of companies whose names we don't know who are doing good work as well. So how do we do a better job of telling the story? And one way we are doing that is with our podcast. So this year we launched a podcast called Under Construction, and if you go to seattlechamber.com, I'm sorry, this thing is like out of control. I'm going to have my Marcom director handle this for me so we can get back. And the reason we launched Under Construction, our podcast, is that we know that businesses and employers have compelling stories to tell. So this is an opportunity for us to get behind the brands with some people on a more personal level to tell the stories about their companies, their career journeys, and how they got there. They're 30-minute interviews with business and civic leaders who represent a cross-section of our community, where the listeners get to know more about them, who they are, what they stand for, and where they see our region growing. So we've released 3 episodes so far, and we encourage you to check them out at seattlechamber.com/underconstruction. Now, when I think about what it was like when I first got here a year ago, this was during the throes of the debate about the jobs tax. So welcome to Seattle, Maryland. Here's your new job. Get in the middle of this job tax fight. And on the second week of my job, I was actually asked to be in a public debate on a stage hosted by KUOW, and the question was, is Amazon good or bad for Seattle? That was my introduction. Overall, we know that taxing jobs turned out to be unpopular. There were 46,000 signatures collected in less than a month. And this wasn't about businesses saying that we don't care about vulnerable people or that we don't believe that we need more housing. This was about wanting accountability about how current funds are spent and seeing a tangible plan for how the money would be used. And I remind folks, the business community has been supportive of raising revenue. We supported Sound Transit 3. We supported an affordable housing levy. We supported a school levy. So you can't say that we don't support things. We just need to know where the money is being spent and how effective it will be. I would also say, too, though, with that acrimonious process, we know that there is now a breakdown of trust when it comes to the Seattle City government's relationship with its community. 2019 is a very big election year. We're not going to tell you who you should vote for, but coming from government myself, local government means you focus on the nuts and bolts of basic government. Fix my roads, fix my sidewalks, make sure my neighborhood is safe, clean, and attractive. The basics. Those things are crucially important for local government to work. And when Seattle moved to district elections, there was an opportunity for people to show that. So in 2019, this is a really important election. We hope you show up, and we hope you choose people who are thoughtful, open-minded, and are willing to have a rational conversation with people of all sides and all backgrounds. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about impact and action. So last week, the Seattle Chamber of Commerce took what I call a pretty bold step, and we are endorsing Initiative 1000. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's the restoration of affirmative action in Washington State. Washington State is one of 8 states that does not have affirmative action, and it was repealed back in 1998 with I-200. The result of that has been impactful. Women and minority-owned businesses have lost out on $3.5 billion of contracts as a result of I-200. I-1000 that we're supporting does not bring up quotas, and it is based on this. You can use race, ethnicity, veteran status, gender status, sexual orientation, and disability as a factor for qualified businesses and qualified employees. This is not about quotas. It's an opportunity to help restore some of the things that were taken away from underserved communities. So we're supporting I-1000. It's in the state legislature right now, and if you're interested in taking action, reach out to your legislature and tell them why it's important to support this. This is not about taking anything away from anyone. It's about the restoration. And to give you a few data points, when you look at federal Federal Reserve showed that in 2016, the median net worth for an average white family was $171,000. For a black family, it's $17,600. For a Latino family, it's $20,700. The same report found that almost 1 in 5 black households have zero or negative net worth. Wealth lays the foundation for more wealth. When you hire people, you give them economic opportunity. And I tell people, the best social program is a job that pays well or the ability to run a business that is flourishing. So, in the spirit of action and impact, taking action with affirmative action can have a serious positive impact to help people who are underserved. If you're in a position to hire, to recruit, or to promote, think about it through the lens of equity. When we all work together, we can solve some of our biggest problems. It is 2019, and we leaders have got to get beyond feeling uncomfortable when we talk about race, people who are underserved, and what it means to have a truly inclusive economy. Diversity is a great concept. Inclusion is the act of making it real so that economic prosperity can be shared by as many people as possible. Thank you. So now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And please tell me who you are.
Question over here.
Hi, Marilyn. Craig Dawson, Retail Lockbox. Say, just a question. You talked about your work with transportation in Tacoma. We've had some levies pass in Seattle for roads, but our roads are like a third world country. What can the Chamber do to help Seattle actually pave roads versus just like the end of sidewalks or, I mean, we really need roads paved.
So I'm going to give you a government answer because it's honest. The roads that are in bad condition is pretty true in most major cities in America. You can't undo decades of neglect with the ballot measure that passes and think you're going to fix everything in 5 years. And the tax revenue doesn't arrive in a lump sum. It gets collected over time. So public works departments work to fix the most distressed streets, but they also have to work to maintain existing streets that are good to keep them from falling into disrepair. In my opinion, it will take at least a decade to really see visible progress. And then a nice old ice storm comes along and undoes 40% of what you just did. Hi, John.
Hi, Marilyn. Wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit more about some of the Chamber's affiliates.
Yes.
Because the Chamber you covered a lot of the things that the Chamber has done, but there are a lot of other organizations that really promote our economy and our community that the Chamber is involved with. So
Absolutely. So at the Chamber, we have what are called affiliate organizations, and we have one called Leadership Tomorrow, where we are there any Leadership Tomorrow alums in the house? Where we are cultivating, I don't like to use the word next generation because I'm of that age where I'm feeling ageism against me. So we cultivate the next set of leaders. And we pull people from a lot of different organizations, but really trying to cultivate people to be leaders in business, to maybe run for office, and to do some really good work. So it's really building our bench. There's a Trade Development Alliance, which is now part of the Greater Seattle Partnership, and they really help promote the Metropolitan Seattle region. Believe it or not, when you travel to other parts of the country, or even abroad, when you say you're from Seattle, and you start naming off some of the companies from Seattle, people don't know that. They think that Microsoft and Amazon are from the Silicon Valley. They think Starbucks is from New York. They think Boeing is a Chicago-based company. We won't go into that. So we knew that there was a need to do a better job of marketing our region. And here's the truth. When you're traveling in Dallas or Atlanta or Shanghai or in Chengdu, they're not parsing our municipal borders. They look at Seattle as a metropolitan region, and that can benefit all the cities that surround Greater Seattle. One more thing, we have a technology alliance where we actually focus on high tech and promoting jobs in high tech and making sure that we are building a pipeline of students who can go into the industry, especially kids who are based here locally, because we shouldn't have to import talent to fill out these high wage jobs here.
Question on your
then,
left.
of course, John's favorite, the Alliance for Education, where we work with the school district to make sure that they have the resources they need, that we're recruiting teachers who reflect the community they serve, and really showing that we have a role to play in education. Thank you, John. Sorry.
Thank you for your comments. I'm Laura Behrman, retired from Group Health, and my question is two parts. One, what is that vast and endless sea that you envision from your leadership role, to quote Bill Center's quote? And secondly, when you leave this position, what will be your legacy in terms of only the business development side?
So only on the business development side, I will say a few things. It is my hope, and I'm not going to say that I single-handedly will do these things, but when you elevate the conversation and push people, good things can happen. It is my hope that the boards of our largest local, global companies reflect the community that they serve and that they're more diverse. I would also say that it is my hope that when people run for office in the city of Seattle and their candidates, they are proud to say, yes, I'm backed by the chamber and I'm a business candidate.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
Given your background in government, I'm curious for your assessment of the City of Seattle's strategy to fight homelessness. Are we on track? And what is the Chamber's role in solving that problem?
No, that's a really good question. So when the chamber and the business community said that we oppose the head tax, the second part of that was, okay, so now what are you going to do because you're responsible for them not solving homelessness? My response is that the head tax was not going to solve homelessness. Building 500 units of housing over 5 years was not going to solve homelessness. But to your point, I think that what we have to do is acknowledge a few truths. There seems to be this sentiment in the spirit of trying to be compassionate of not wanting to make some hard decisions. It is more inhumane to let people sit under a bridge and sleep in cardboard in squalor and mental health than to at least try to stabilize them. In Tacoma, we created what we called stability sites. These were giant FEMA tents where we purchased tents for homeless people to stay inside. We had a huge encampment that I declared a public health emergency because it was filthy, there was drug dealing happening, people were living in unsanitary conditions. We created this emergency tent. We gave people 60 days to move from that site, because we were going to clean it up, to the new site. The new site is supervised, it is fenced, there is security, there are showers, there are washers and dryers, there's running water, there are places to store your goods. Now, the truth here is that people didn't come to the stability site and then go right out of homelessness a month or even 6 months later, because a lot of people on the streets who are chronically homeless have been there for a really, really long time. But at least getting them off the streets and into this stability site is more humane than letting people live on the streets and in squalor. Every single person who's homeless did not come to this site, but a lot of people did, and I think that's a good thing. Another thing, though, that we really have to acknowledge, and this really speaks to the mental health system that we have, is that some people on the streets will always need, for the rest of their lives, someone to wake them up in the morning, to dress them, to feed them, to give them their meds, to make sure that they are adequately bathed and cared for, and to make sure they don't harm themselves. And they will need that care 24 hours a day with licensed medical professionals on site. Permanent supportive housing is one way to help people who have the capacity to be independent, but a lot of people do not. And the word that comes up, which is very taboo, is institutionalizing. I will call it advanced assisted living, but we have to acknowledge that a proportion of the people on the streets need the 24-hour care to that degree that I'm describing, and the system we have right now is failing them. So that wasn't an answer, but that's my opinion.
Question on your left.
Hi, thank you so much for your remarks. First of all, we'd love to have you as a member, so if you could just keep that in mind. But, you know, we have a partnership with, we have a couple of really interesting partnerships. One's with the fire department, thanks to Harold. and another with the diplomacy community, the diplomatic community through the Consular Association. And it just strikes me that there could be tremendous synergy between the Chamber and Rotary, not just Seattle Rotary, but
Right.
District 5030, because as you say, it's now a metropolitan kind of thing, and
Right.
5030 is 45 clubs. So, but have you given that any thought, or is that something you'd consider?
So I haven't thought about joining Rotary again, because I was a member of Rotary 8 in Tacoma. But I will tell you this, when I received the invitation from Cindy to come speak to you, part of what my job is getting out in the community, helping people understand what we do, and forming relationships and alliances. And I will tell you that the challenges we are facing right now in the Metropolitan Seattle, beyond the business part, the housing crisis, the transportation issues, government alone will not solve those problems. If we're going to build adequate housing in this region for people who have very little means and even middle income folks, the private sector has to be adequately involved to inject capital into the system and to help build more housing and to drive down the cost of doing it. So I welcome the opportunity to have Rotary as a partner with the Chamber. And if any of you are not members of the Chamber and you have a business, you should be one.
So thank you, Marilyn Strickland, for coming to speak. So as most of you know, I usually end the program with a proverb that relates to our speaker and topic of the day. And Marilyn, I really appreciate your bold, out-of-the-box thinking and the themes you've embraced: shared prosperity, global engagement, lifting people up. And I anticipate great developments and fortune for our city because of your impact. So Marilyn, who was born in Seoul, Korea, so I will end with this Korean saying, "Fortune favors the brave." It's been fun, everyone. See you next week.